Hello there, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. James here as ever for today's video, all about how to get hired for the job that you want. A lovely ACCA careers and jobs top tip video that ACCA have kindly allowed me to upload from their recent careers fair. This is where we've got Corrinne Mills, who is sharing her insights throughout the presentation. I put all the timings below, so feel free to skip ahead. And if you've got any questions, leave me a comment below. Happy to help to give you some insights and to direct you to other resources. I'll leave the links below as well that are discussed in the video, and I really hope the video helps. Make sure you give the video a massive like and thumbs up, and of course, as ever, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. And as you can see from this recording, don't worry, I'm not changing my career from being a qualified ACCA accountant to a chef anytime soon. But let's head on to the recording now. I hope you enjoy it, and let me know what you think in the comments. Cheers.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us at the ACCA UK Virtual Careers Fair. My name is Lorna Williamson. I'm the Early Careers Manager at ACCA UK, and it's my pleasure to introduce Corrinne Mills to you today, talking us through this session on personal career management and how to get hired. Corrinne is the founder and joint managing director of Personal Career Management, which was established in 2003. She has over 25 years of experience as a career coach and leading a career coaching team. And not to mention, she's also the author of a best-selling book, You're Hired: How to Write a Brilliant CV. So before I hand over to you, Corrinne, just to let everyone know, there will be time for some Q&A at the end, so please do send through some questions through on the chat box, and we'll make sure we get through those questions for you after Corinne's session. So without further ado, over to you, Corrinne.
Thank you, Lorna. Yes, so please do send your questions in, because it kind of, again, makes it a bit more lively. And I think often the question that you might have is very relevant for other people as well. So thank you for inviting me here today. So what I thought I'd do is talk about some key tips for getting hired for the job that you want. So let me just share my screen. So we've got some slides to look at as well. Can you see that? Hopefully you can. Excellent. So how to get hired for the job you want. And I guess, you know, having worked with literally thousands of individuals in my career coaching journey, helping them kind of look at their options, but also secure that role, I've tried to distill down a few of the kind of key messages, the key tips that hopefully you'll be able to use to give you a bit of a competitive advantage. Because it is a competition, you know, the job that you want, other people will want as well. And you need to put your best foot forward. You need to give yourself every chance of success. Okay, so let's look at three key things to start off with. When you are taking yourself as a candidate to the job market, what is an employer looking for? How are they judging you? And there are key things that they're going to be looking at as part of their criteria. The first one is going to be, can you do the job? Have you got the technical capabilities to do that? Second one is, do you want the job? Are you going to stay even if we do appoint you? And the third thing is, how are you going to do the job? Now, I want to talk about each one of these in turn, because although it sounds common sense, right, this is where I'd say 98% of candidates get this wrong. They just don't get it pitched quite right. So let's look at the first thing. Can you do the job? Now, the good thing is that employers will generally tell you what it is they want, right? It'll be in the job advert. There'll be selection criteria down there. But you know, on this slide, I've got a few of those examples there, you know, full or part qualified accountant, you know, ACCA qualifications, experience using Sage and CRM systems. But, you know, they will have some really systematic criteria that they want, that they feel that the person who is going to be good at this job needs to bring with them. So you've got to really use this, not as just a general sense of, oh, that's the kind of person that they're looking for. You have to be much more specific. You have to drill down to the detail and talk about every single thing that they are asking for you need to demonstrate that you've got it. So if they're talking about here a systematic, meticulous and thorough approach to work, there's no point just saying, yes, I'm very systematic, I'm very meticulous, I've got great attention to detail. Actually, you have to show an example or talk about an example, whether you're in an interview or it's a CV or an application. You have to demonstrate it. You have to provide some evidence. So that evidence might be, I fill in the weekly reports, that have to be meticulous. They are checked for variances. They come back accurate. There's some kind of measure that shows that you are really accurate in what it is that you do. Strong critical thinking and problem solving skills. Again, you can't just say, yes, I'm a good problem solver. Give an example. So that problem solver might be that there was a discrepancy that didn't make sense. Maybe there was a problem around deadlines. Somebody wanted something before you could deliver it, and you had to negotiate it or find another way around it or enlist a colleague to help you in delivering it. Each one of the things that they are looking for, and it's almost worth getting yourself a little grid. And on one side, what do they want? What can I offer? With an example. You have to really lay it out, because what they're doing when they are shortlisting is they're looking at each CV and seeing, can I give you a tick? So if it's, very good verbal and written communication skills, okay, is there an example in this application that demonstrates that that's the case? There is. Fantastic. Let's give you a tick. The more ticks you get, the more likely you are to be shortlisted. The other thing that's really important to know is that these really important things that they say that they want need to be towards the top of your CV or your application, because most likely the first sifting of your application is going to be digitally. It's going to be through recruitment software. And recruitment software, the bots in the recruitment software, will rank kind of candidates more favorably if they've got those keywords higher in their CV. So, on that profile that you might write at the top of your CV, if there you're talking about your ACCA qualification, if you're talking about, yes, your experience with Sage or another CRM system, and those words are up the top there, that's also what the bots recognize, and they are going to rank you more highly than another candidate who might have similar experience, but who've buried them later on in the CV. And the same thing applies when you're at the interview. It's like, that top profile on your CV, it's all your key messages, the things that you immediately want to create a great impression and show that you're the candidate for them. At interview, when they ask you, tell me about yourself, you need to be talking to them about all the things they're looking for and how you've got it, right? So proving that you can do the job, that you'll meet their selection criteria, is the most important thing. If you don't do that, you're probably not going to get through the first round. Now, having said that, sometimes you don't have every single thing that they're looking for, but find some parallel. Find something that is very similar. Okay, so you don't have Sage, but you've used another CRM system. Find something that's an equivalent, or show that you are really easy, you're good at learning, or that you've done it on your course. So you've got a really good knowledge of that, even if you haven't kind of implemented and had direct experience with it. Lorna.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you don't mind me just jumping in, we've had a question come in, which I think might be a good one, if you don't mind helping out with it now. So on communication skills, and the question is, can we put any examples, or how can we put an example of a communication skill in our CV, or is it something that we should be waiting to show in interview instead?
Really great question. Communication skills, and I think it is a lot of these softer skills that, in my experience, finance professionals sometimes miss out on. They kind of, go big on the technical competencies, but forget to really emphasize the softer capabilities. on the one level, your communication skills will be expressed on how well you've written your application, right? So your written communication skills, right? You can say that you've got great communication skills, written communication skills, but actually if your CV is very clumsily expressed, poorly written, right, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. So that's why it's always good to get somebody else to check over your CV. So, but you can talk about, so if it's written communication skills, then talk about reports that you've written, talk about emails or correspondence or things that are a bit more challenging. So perhaps there was a sensitive or difficult situation that you had to deal with. So perhaps you needed to write to another department head about something that was really sensitive, but you had to do it diplomatically, but, you know, factually. Talk about that as an example of, you know, where you really had to think carefully about your words, or communications that you had to, you know, maybe you wrote a training report. So perhaps there was some new software that was introduced, you were trained up and you helped to write a training manual as a result of that. So that's the written skills. Definitely find an example. On your verbal skills, again, really, really important. And yes, you need to find a way to write down that expresses that your verbal skills are really good. So that might be, you know, at team meetings, you give presentations or briefings. Maybe you've had to go and present your findings to a departmental head. Maybe you've had to give an audit presentation on findings. To talk about the things where you've had to do in different situations, communication. So that might be you've had to negotiate something, present something, you've had to help build consensus. Maybe there were two people who needed different things and you were able to help mediate and find a third way that suited them both. Don't wait. In fact, you know, the question was, do you wait till the interview to share that? No, don't wait till the interview to share anything. It has to be upfront in your CV, in your application, expressed from the start. I hope that answers the question, but do please keep the questions coming in. So yes, so all your kind of skills and knowledge, the education and qualifications, the training that you've done needs to be really clearly kind of evidenced in relation to the selection criteria that they say that they want. So as I say, quite often it's useful just to do yourself a little spreadsheet, or personally, I quite like doing a mind map. So I get myself a big sheet of paper, I put me in the front, I put what are they looking for? Yes, meticulous approach to detail, finance qualification, management accounts experience, the things that they're looking for, and then spin off and do all the evidence on this mind map about things that you've got that demonstrate that. And then that's all your information gathered. And then you can use that to build your CV, but also to talk about and emphasize at interview as well. The next thing is you've really got to share that whatever job you're going for, you really want it. And I think candidates too often play it cool because they don't want to appear desperate. But the thing that any employer really wants to know is work for them. I think, you know, in some respects, it's a great candidate market at the moment because there are skill shortages and there's a lot of people resigning and moving elsewhere. The last thing that an employer wants is to think that, well, you might be there, you know, for a few months and then move on again, and they've paid out for recruitment costs or onboarding you, etc. So being motivated, really expressing, I'm really keen to work for you. This is why I've applied for this job, because, you know, I like your organization, I use your products ourselves. This sounds such an interesting job because it's using the skills that I really enjoy using. You actually have to say this stuff, right? Sometimes people think, well, isn't it implied? I'm applying for the job, so surely I want it. there's a big difference for an employer being on the receiving end of somebody who seems genuinely motivated. And I can tell you that is a differentiator amongst candidates, because most candidates don't do it, but it's like, you know, catnip to an employer who's looking for the next hire. So absolutely show that energy and motivation. I think the other thing that I really want to talk about is, you know, perhaps you've proved you can do the job, you proved that you want the job, but it's also what employers are looking for is how you do that. So they don't want a job's worth, they want somebody who is going to be a star performer. You know, they want good value for their money. So not only do you have to prove, yes, I've got the finance experience, I've got the competencies, but I'm going to be a really high performer for you. And what does that mean, a high performer? Well, broadly, you show that you've got a track record of getting things done, right? That you are quick to learn, that you're resilient. So you've had challenges that you've had, excuse me, I'll just have a drink of water. You've had challenges that you've had to deal with, that you've overcome. I think this thing about being a change agent is really important, because every organization now is about transformation. It's never about standing still. It's always what's the next iteration, what's the next thing that we are moving towards. So you're showing not only your technical competence for here and now, but your ability to learn, your ability to manage change, your adaptability, your versatility, because, well, it's a bit like nobody foresee a pandemic coming, although perhaps some people did. But, you know, we've had to kind of swivel so quickly and adjust. It's kind of showing those capabilities that are really important. It's showing that you're really conscientious about the quality of your work. It's these kind of things that you need to demonstrate. And these need to be threaded through your kind of CVs and your applications. Now, how do you do that? Well, let's have a look. Is this kind of thing that you need to be looking at? It's where you've added value. So as a result, in your career to date, as a result of you being in that post, what have you made better than it was originally? So you might have inherited a role that was, you know, in a certain condition, functioning in a certain way. What have you done within the role that's made things better, made positive changes, needed to make those adjustments, helped with transformations, you know, a whole lot of things that you will have had to do as a result of that. So, you know, business efficiency, if you've been in a business analyst role, well, okay, you've been crunching the data and making recommendations, but what was the actual impact of the analysis that you did? Why were things better as a result? Which recommendations were taken up as a result? How did you mitigate some risks? Maybe there was, you know, what seemed to be unaccounted expenditure in one respect, or kind of loose systems that you helped tighten up. Again, these are positive things that you helped to bring about. But the opportunities you identified, actually, there's a sales opportunity here, or we could, in the contracts that we're negotiating, there's, well, actually, if we changed a little bit on the service level agreement, we could save ourselves some money there, but it would actually look like a really great deal for the customer as well. Kind of business opportunities that you helped spot. There's also things, you know, particularly as you get more senior in your career, about leading change. So that might be, you know, a new technology system. It might be a restructuring within the department. It might be a new workflow. It's definitely about the whole thing during COVID, where we've all had to adjust so very quickly to remote working or hybrid working, or just, you know, working in a completely different way. in a way that protects business continuity, which was a remarkable achievement. I think everybody needs to have something about that on their CV and to talk about it in interview. But it's also about developing other people. That if you're in a management role or you're looking for a leadership role, it's definitely about leading through other people. So, how have you helped improve the performance of the rest of the team? What positive influences have you been able to bring about? What changes to the work systems? What changes about culture have you been able to help instigate as well? And if you want to move into a management role, but you haven't actually directly managed people yet, then you need to be talking about or getting yourself involved in mentoring, training, seeing if you can get involved in some recruitment, cross collaboration, project groups, taking on more responsibilities within there, because these are also things that you can talk about if you're looking for increasingly senior roles. Also, look, for finance professionals, the bottom line is important. What have you done that's helped increase profits, reduce costs, reduce risk, all of those things? What's been the point of view in your role? So these, again, are things that you need to talk about. Lorna.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just, there's been another interesting question that's come through on the chat, so I'll just jump in if that's all right. So someone has asked, I always find it difficult to talk about changes or improvements that I've made without making it sound like a criticism of my previous employer. So do you have any suggestions about how I could get around this, please?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Because you're right, you want to sing your own praises, but you absolutely right, you do not want to be negative at all about your previous employer. Even if they were a nightmare to work with or a nightmare manager, you want to avoid any criticism. So I like the word challenge, right? So you say, there were a number of challenges. There were challenges around, we had some demanding customers, or there were challenges about the volume of workload and, getting that delivered on time. But actually, I was able to do that by negotiating this, that, and the other, or building consensus about something else. What I would say is, if there was something, so choose something that feels like a real achievement. If it's at all sensitive, so actually you felt like your manager really let you down on this, or there was a really dreadful customer, and it was an incident that kind of caused you some emotion, then I would not use that example, because I've seen again and again in interviews, sometimes people, there's often a question, well, tell us about one of your challenges, a challenge that you overcame. And people, candidates talk about something that was really difficult for them, but they start to relive it in the interview. It takes them back to quite a dark, difficult place in their career, and they can get a little bit lost in there, and they forget to talk about all the positive outcome as a result. So anything that's at all sensitive, ditch that, choose something else that feels much safer. Talk about it as a challenge. There was a challenge, there was a, demanding customer, we had to have this deadline, we had to complete this project in 3 months, when we would normally have to do it, we'd have at least 6 months, but we were able to do it, and I did it by doing this, that, and the other. I think the other thing is, it is about what you did. They don't want to know what the team did, or your manager did, or the organization did. So you can confine it to what you did that helped make a difference. So maybe you talked to somebody and that just freed up an inroad that you could go down, or you problem solved, or you kind of made some other recommendation that made things work.
Sorry, thanks, Corrinne. Someone's just asked, I think, a follow-on from that one. So just asking, is what you're describing the same as the STAR method?
Yeah, you could use the STAR method, absolutely. And in fact, let's go on. I'm going to talk about this. So let's go on and talk about this, because I think this is such a key part of what's going to get you hired that I want to emphasize this. So let's just, the STAR method, I think some of you will probably know that. It's about how you talk about your stories: situation, task, action, result. But basically, think about things you're proud of, your successes. What are you proud of? What have you achieved? What did you do? Not we, not the team. What did you do? And how did you do it? And what that says about you. And I've got some examples here. So let me just move my screen out the way. So look, here's just a really simple example. Okay, there was a problem with data accuracy, right? So you're compiling reports, doing some analysis, but actually some of the data seemed to be wrong. Okay. I'm sure that happens to you every day. But with this particular example, what did you do that made a difference? And how did you do it? Well, okay, so first of all, I used my initiative, because I not only spotted that the data was wrong, I thought, actually, this might be more of a system error than just me rectifying, you know, a digit in a spreadsheet. So actually, you took ownership of that. You had to go and talk to perhaps the people who were affected by that, the key stakeholders. Perhaps they were the people who gave you the data in the first place, or the people that you had already received some of the data that you had to go and talk to and say, well, actually, that's not completely accurate, and this is why. So you definitely needed your communication skills and diplomacy skills and problem skills around all of those. Perhaps with looking at a new way to collect the data, people had different ideas about the way to do it. So maybe you had to help build a consensus, because, you know, to find a way through that would work. I'm sure there would have been a problem about working under pressure, because, you know, data is your currency. That's the information that you need. So there would have been real pressures to have resolved this quickly, even if it's a larger system error. And so as part of that, you would probably needed to use negotiation skills. Maybe you needed to work with the software people. Maybe you needed to work with people in a different department. You had to coordinate it all together, negotiate it, implement it, check it, verify it, maybe create even a new, you know, workflow process around it. There's lots of things, lots of capabilities that you've shown for this one thing, which was the data wasn't accurate. The other thing then to think about is, well, what did that help do? Why was that an important thing to do? Well, because you identified this and took ownership of you know, flagging it up, you not only corrected an error, but you reduced the time spent for other people on that error. You didn't compound the error, you rectified it. Perhaps you helped to mend the system so that that error wouldn't recur in the future. So you're saving everyone time. It's the quality of the information. And perhaps there was another impact as a result of that, was that you did such a good job in handling this whole problem and whole challenge that you were asked to sit on a user committee, or you were asked to draw up the new work process flow, or, you know, train new recruits. So there was some other validation or successful impact as a result of you doing this. So this is the kind of thing that you need to be thinking about, these kind of stories. And here's a couple of other ones I prepared earlier, as they say. You definitely need to have one about COVID. But, you know, in response to COVID, I quickly organised remote technology and it needed, reviewed priorities, reassured anxious colleagues and customers. And what's the impact of that? It helped protect business continuity at a very, very challenging time. So again, it's about what you did, but it also shows your resilience. It shows your versatility, your ability to manage change. There's so many things that you can talk about in these kind of stories. Guess what? I've got another one here. I'm sure all of you have dealt with somebody at work who's been tricky. Maybe there was a long history of them tricky with the finance department. Maybe you were able to develop a much more positive working relationship with them. So, you know, I developed a much more positive working relationship with a key stakeholder who'd previously been very critical of the department. I think it's very helpful for finance professionals to talk about a relationship building success that they've had, because again, it shows a really useful soft skill. It's important that you are able to connect not only with people in your own team, but across the business, potentially with customers, clients, suppliers, all of those things. So showing your communication skills, which we were talking about earlier, an example about relationship building always works really well. And again, you know, an employer figures, actually, if you can show me that you've had good relationships with people in the past and you've been able to even improve tricky relationships, then that probably means you're going to have a good relationship with me as well and future colleagues. And then, going back, last one, identified an expenditure issue with a particular department, and by working more closely with the manager and implementing greater controls, managed to reduce the budget spend by 10%. So again, this is a bottom line thing. And you do definitely need to have, when you're talking an interview, you need to talk about business impacts as well. So the budget spend by 10%, the numbers, the figures. Again, you know, you're not going to share any commercial secrets in your CV or an interview, but talking about figures, numbers, percentages, increase in business effectiveness, productivity, profit, reduce risk, all those things with numbers, percentages, figures, stats, you know, reduced lead times, quality improvements, they are all really, really good. So that's the hard business impact stuff that's there. So just rounding up, and we have got some time for some other questions. Those are some key messages that I kind of wanted to talk about. So first of all, match the selection criteria. Show you're a high performer. Definitely these examples, these stories, and you probably need about 5 or 6 of these really good stories that show all your capabilities, show the business impact, you know, technical, hard skills, but also the soft skills, show your energy and enthusiasm, and also be proactive, because you need to be capturing these stories throughout your career and really noticing them and making a list of them, because you need to use them for your applying for your next job. Lorna.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Corrinne. That was, yeah, really, really insightful, and I think really valuable for lots and lots of people, and lots of hints and tips and really good examples of how to articulate everything, I think, really through different examples. So yeah, it's great. Thank you. And we've had quite a few questions come through on the Q&A, which is great. So please keep those coming if there's anything that you want to ask Corrinne, and we can go through some of those now.
Right.
Thank you. So the first question that we had through was from somebody saying that they've got 10 years of experience in a administrative role, but no kind of direct finance or accounting experience. Would they be better off, or would they have a better chance of applying to an entry-level graduate type scheme rather than applying directly to a more experienced hire type role?
Yes, well, I don't think, yes. So if you're not an experienced hire in this field, then I think that would be a little bit more challenging for you. I think my aim might be to go and almost see if you can get a kind of more senior administrative job in either a finance department or a finance practice, because they'll see that you are it's like a bridging between where you've been and where you can immediately deliver and where you want to be. And I think you'd be a really attractive candidate for somebody in that space. And then move around and then kind of show your capabilities, try and take on more responsibilities. I think I would try and do that. You can apply for, you know, the more early entry roles. There's nothing to say that you can't. You know, age discrimination says that, you know, those will be open for you. But I think you might be missing a trick, because I think you've got all of that other really rich career experience, and I think they would get this. I think they would get the story. I think if you can say, this is you don't say if you're ACCA fully qualified or studying for your qualifications, but if they can see you're studying for your qualification, this is an area that you want to get into. You can do a great job for them in terms of the more administrative roles, but you can take on some additional finance opportunities as well. I think you'd be a real catch as a candidate.
Great, yeah, that's some really interesting advice. So don't underestimate the value of the professional experience that you've already got that you can bring to a role. Yeah, great, thank you. So another question that we have had through is, usually a job description has a lot on the wish list for the candidate that they're after. Imagine you can tick all of the boxes. When we write our CV, cover letter, or we're at the interview, should we highlight just one or two key skills and elaborate on those with lots of examples, or would we be better off simply saying, I can do everything?
So this is the trick, right? Use your stories. We've talked about these 5 or 6 stories, because in those stories of your achievements are wrapped up so many capabilities. So if you're talking about, when you're talking about, they might say, what are your strengths, right? So in terms of the strengths, you've got to answer the things that that they're looking for. Right, the key things. So my strengths are, technically I'm very, skilled in, business analytics and, data, data reports, all of these kind of things. But then give them an example which says, for instance, I produced these reports, I did this analysis, I needed to go and present it to the board, right? Because that will tick off something else which talks about their communication skills that are in their selection criteria. I've had to, negotiate around, deadlines and timelines. So you're just ticking off the things that are in their selection criteria within this story. So I think it's almost like you've got little ding bells that you've got to ring in your CV and at your interview that registers with them that you've ticked off those things in their selection criteria. So you do need to mention all of them, but you can do it quite subtly by wrapping it all up in a story.
Great, thank you. So the next question is, I had a senior role at my previous employer, but I've recently moved to a new country and I'm applying for less senior roles over here to get an easier start. How do I communicate to a potential employer correctly that I was a CFO, but I want to be in a less senior role now?
I think in some respects that might be less of an issue than it's a new country. So I think what employers will want to know is, what's your familiarity with working in that different business culture? There might be different regulations or rules around all of those. So I think your first task actually is to reassure them that, one, you're going to stay in this country and you're not going to, kind of pop off and move off elsewhere. So it might be that if you've got any contacts or anything else that you can do, even if it's on a voluntary basis in this new country, I would start to do that. So maybe their friend's got a business over there, or you can do something for a charity, just so that you can talk about having some recent local experience in the country. I think that's going to be really, really important. I think the other thing, for anyone who's applying for something less senior, you do have to be a bit careful, because people sometimes think, oh, is it just that, what happened? Were they not up to their last job, or was it health reasons, or they start thinking, oh, what might be the negative reasons around that. So I think if you can just cover a positive reason, maybe the positive reason is connected with you moving to a new country for personal reasons. Perhaps it's, while you've really enjoyed being a CFO, it's taken me away from the parts of the job that I really enjoyed, such as managing a team or, working directly with customers. So find something about the new role at the new status that is more of a magnet for you than when you were a CFO. And yeah, so that's why I really wanted to revert back to this, because this is what I enjoyed.
Perfect, thank you. So the next question is, I have a 2-2 degree in chemical engineering, but most applications specify a 2-1, which is around 90% of jobs from the sounds of what they've been looking at so far. I'm part qualified in ACCA and currently work as a management accounts assistant. Is it even worthwhile applying for these positions?
Oh yes, I wouldn't worry about the 2-2. There's lots of jobs where it won't matter the grade. Now, if you're applying for some of the management consultancies, they will, won't you? But then they will be, they've got high benchmarks, and they'll be looking for, the highest level degrees. But there's lots of other places that it won't matter. And 2-2 is by far nothing to be, there's nothing difficult at all. You might want to leave that off. You don't need to put the grade in your CV, although again, I don't think it's an issue that you have got it in there. I think it's almost like, this is a shame it's not a little bit more interactive, really, because I'd like to know the kind of roles that you're applying for that are saying that it only needs 2-1, because my experience, and I'm sure there's lots of jobs on the ACCA careers board where that's not a requirement. So I don't get too hung up about that, but you might need to widen your selection a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, and sorry, we did lose you just for a moment there, Corrinne. So
okay.
you may have mentioned it, but just if you don't mind me just adding on to that as well. In my previous experience as well, a lot of the roles that ask for 2-1s, often depending on if you do have any rationale or reasons why, they do sometimes still accept applicants that don't have that 2-1 if they can give a little bit more kind of information or rationale as to maybe why they didn't achieve that, or a little bit more context around that as well. So yeah, just to, I guess, reiterate what Corrinne's saying, and don't let it put you off. And there are plenty of jobs out there that might not be asking for the 2-1, but if there are, still go for it.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice there, Lorna, because if your heart is really set on a particular organisation, right, then throw everything you've got at it. Write a special letter, just talk about how much that why you think you could be a great hire for them. If there's one particular aspect of the criteria you can't meet, just do. I think there is also something about going to the trouble of making a special case is also sets you apart from the other candidates, and very often people will look at that. So good luck with that. Let us know how you get on.
Oh, sorry, just struggled to come off of mute there.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question is, do jobs that say they offer full training really want someone that they can train, or would they still go for someone else with more experience if they had the option?
Oh, so sorry, say that for me again. So something with, they said full training available.
Yes, so a job that says that they offer full training as part of the role, would they really hire someone that needs training over, say, another candidate that came to them with all the experience that didn't require training? I guess the question is, would they put their money where their mouth is when it comes to offering that training, or would they prefer to go with someone that actually didn't require any additional training?
Well, I think if they've actually put full training available, that suggests to me that they're finding it a little bit tricky to find the right candidates, maybe, or they're wanting to open their to be a bit more inclusive in this. So I don't think that they would bother to put that in if that wasn't the case. What they will want to see, though, even if they, for anything where they said that training is available, they will want to see that you are really committed to working in that role. Maybe you've done a little bit of training yourself, or a bit of extra study, or they want to see before they invest in you that you're going to be able to do it, you're willing to do it, all of those things. But yeah, and it's probably a trade-off. They're probably willing to train you because that will be offset, because they'll probably pay those people less money as well. So it's more of an entry level. But I think if they say full training available, then they're willing to find, if they've got the right candidate they're willing to invest in, they will go for them.
Thank you. How do you demonstrate strategic thinking when seeking a role, when you're currently at a mid-senior management level role, but looking to move into senior management? So particularly if you feel that your examples at a strategic level might not be as strong.
So just run that by me again. So this is strategic.
Yeah, so I think the question really is how to demonstrate strategic thinking. It doesn't actually specify whether that's on a CV, cover letter, or in an interview. So yeah. I suppose just generally in the process. And I think this person's speaking about moving from a mid-senior level role, looking to go into a more senior strategic role, and maybe feeling that their strategic examples aren't as strong as they could be.
So it's a really good question, actually. So strategic thinking. So it's about kind of leading through people, but it's also about the future and about kind of looking even outside the organization and seeing what future trends are, how it's going to impact on the business. So it's that real external environment thing. So that will be, yes, it'll be about finance, it'll be about business, it'll be about society. It's the much larger picture. So I think any reading, conferences, joint working groups, cross-organizational activities that you can get yourself involved in, which is looking at the wider picture, is going to be very, very helpful. And then you bringing back those thoughts and recommendations to help, shape the organization for the future. It's part of organizational development. So definitely get yourself outside the organization and all these other influences. I think the strategic thinking is also about transformation, and even within your own team or your own orbit, what are you doing to help make those positive changes? So that might be about restructuring the team. It might be about introducing new technologies, or but importantly, it's not just about operational efficiency, it's about how it fits in the bigger picture. So it's got to have that organizational wide bigger picture aspect to it. Then we've just improved the quality in their own team. Then the other thing is to think about is some other external benchmarking as well. So maybe there are some other quality assessments or benchmarks, things that are best practice that you can help initiate, bring about, lead on. Those kind of things I think are useful things for you to get yourself involved in, and then trumpet when you get to your CV and at an interview.
Great, thank you. We've got lots of questions still coming in, which is great. Thanks everyone for sending them in. So I'm finding it hard to receive a response to the jobs that I apply for. I think the reason is that I don't have experience in any accountancy roles. Although I'm about to complete my ACCA, I've only got 3 exams left. What can I do differently?
Yes, so I think no matter what role you've been doing, you need to find the parallels between, you know, what's been your job to date and the finance role. So for instance, if you've been, you know, working in a shop, so maybe you've been working in a retail outlet, you need to kind of collect all of the things that are relevant to a finance role from that. So, you know, you work in a shop, then you're dealing with credit card transactions, you're dealing with the CRM system, you're dealing with customers, you're problem solving, you're having to do sales figures reports or monthly end reports, you're having to do stock inventory. You know, these are all things that have parallels with working in a finance role, because it's about data collection, it's about numbers, it's about figures, it's about profit, it's about sales figures, all of those things, you know, stock attrition, these things. So you need to, and again, I kind of see this from a lot of early years finance professionals, and they kind of go, well, you know, I've worked in a restaurant, or I've worked in, you know, I've worked in a different role and it's not directly relevant, and I'm trying to get these finance jobs and I'm just not getting anywhere. You have to build the relevance in. So you have to really emphasize, yes, you worked in a retail shop, but, you know, on your CV and an interview, talk about all the finance related things that you were involved in. And, you know, and if there was anywhere that you were able to bring your ACCA competencies in there, i.e. maybe, you know, I reconfigured their spreadsheet because it wasn't working as effectively for them as it might, or, you know, because I was really good at doing the sales reports, you know, I was assigned to do that every week. So it's these kind of things that you need to focus on so that they see the relevance.
Great, thank you. Please could you advise what the best way is to get a more senior role once someone who is already working in an accounting environment but would like to progress to the next level?
Yeah, so about how to get your next most senior role. So I think it's always just seeing about what's the difference between where you are now and the next role. So again, sometimes it's a marginal difference, actually. But if it's a more management role, so if it's more team management and you've got limited team management at the moment, then get yourself involved in some more management duties. So do some mentoring, get involved in recruitment, you know, be a team leader. You've got to have that kind of experience before you go for a more management role. I think it's also, the more senior you get, the more it's about transformation. So it's like, what have you done as a result of you being in your role? How have you made things better? And the more senior you get, the more they expect you to have those change things to have had wider impact. So thinking about, you may already have those. What are the great things that you've done? Why is your team in a better place than it is now? And really build those stories up, because that's the kind of impact that they'll be looking for in increasingly senior role. It's just that the team gets bigger, the chain of influence gets bigger. It's those kind of things.
Thank you. So this is a bit more of a broad question, I think, but hopefully you could shed some light. Is an MBA an advantage for senior roles? So quite a general question, I think, maybe without knowing the role specifically.
Yeah, it depends on where you want your career to be. So an MBA can be really useful because it gives you a broader business sense. So if you wanted to be CEO with a big organization, then an MBA may well be really helpful. However, I think where people kind of go a bit awry, it's not just the MBA itself that makes the difference. Because I know lots of people who spent tens of thousands of pounds on MBA expecting to then be able to walk into any role that they want, and the employers are saying, well, yes, but what's your experience? So it has to be coupled with lots of really great experience. Now, you know, sometimes if you're in a very kind of high performing, you know, some of the management consultancies, for instance, then that might be an additional advantage. Sometimes even organisations will support people to do an MBA, or they've got their own in-house MBAs as well. So that's definitely something to have a look at. But I think if you were to privately fund it yourself, and you are looking at an awful lot of money, I think you need to think very clearly about, well, what is the role that I'm going for next? Is that in itself going to be my passport to success? Might be, but it would normally be in combination with, you get some great networks that you meet on an MBA course, but it would be also about running projects. It would be about, organizational experience alongside where you actually get to implement the learnings for your MBA. So I think my answer is an MBA, not just in itself, but combined with other things would be really useful.
Great, that's really useful, thank you. I often find that senior managers are unwilling to delegate tasks that can enhance your leadership skills. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because here you are kind of wanting to progress, and they're holding it a little bit more tightly. I think there's still some things to be figured out in the way that we're starting to work together now, because I think it's so much more hybrid, the way that a lot of people are going to be working. And I think it remains to be seen whether that means that kind of micromanagers will be a little bit more hands-off and willing to delegate, or actually they're going to be even more surveillance and a little bit more kind of locked down. I think it's worth, if you can, having a career conversation with them, maybe separately away from appraisal, and just talking about, can we have a chat about kind of career development and my thoughts. I think you always have to reaffirm that you like your job. You're not intending to go anywhere. You don't want to do any brinkmanship kind of threats about, give me career development or I'll leave, even if that might be the case. You don't want to necessarily say it. But I think, have a career development, career conversation, say, look, I'm really enjoying doing this. I'd love to get some more opportunities to work on this. Have you any advice about how that might be possible? And it might be something that they can delegate to you, or can give to you or assign. It might be that you can get involved in a project group elsewhere within the organisation, or even something external, a cross-organisational group. I know that, because I work with lots of organisations who are really conscious about career development for their staff at the moment. I think more so than they ever have been, which is a really good thing. And, they want to give people career development because they don't want them to leave. So I think it's probably a very timely kind of to have that conversation now, but don't issue any threats, and maybe have some suggestions about the kind of things that you would like, and see what they say. Sometimes managers just need you to talk directly to them. They don't get subtle hints. You think you might be hinting and making it really clear about what you want, but they're distracted and they've got lots of other things in their head. And it's not until you actually sit down and say, could we do this, that they kind of go, oh, yeah, sure. So I think a career conversation with them would be useful.
Perfect, thank you. And I think we've got about 2 minutes left. So should we see if we can get through one more question before the end? Okay, so how should we answer in an interview? What would be your target, or what would you like to achieve in your first 3 to 6 months if you're selected for this role?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I would say, well, it's interesting because one of the things that I often suggest that people do when they're at interview, any questions that you got, is to ask, what would success look like for you? So, if you can feed that question in beforehand, that might be helpful. I think success. So I think it's about kind of, getting to grips with, the key content, but it's about relationships. It's about meeting all the kind of key people, understanding key stakeholder needs, starting to build those relationships, understanding the workflows, and also kind of developing opportunities for further discussions. Because I think in 3 to 6 months, right, you are still learning the job. I think it also depends a little bit on the culture of the organisation. You can probably sense this a little bit. If this is a really fast-paced organisation, maybe it's a really commercial, really sales-orientated, right, they're not going to want you to say, well, I'm going to spend 3 months building relationships, right? They're not. They're going to want you to say, well, no, the thing is, I know you're really fast-paced organization, so my aim is to get up and running as soon as possible, hopefully meet all the key people, and I hope to be delivering for you and, being able to do the reports or whatever certainly by 3 months or whatever it might be. So there's something about the pace of your response that needs to reflect the culture of that organization. There will be other organizations that are a little bit more kind of, careful about their culture and onboarding, who will want you to talk about relationships, maybe reflecting and observing and absorbing the culture so that you get it right. So I think there's something about just sensing a little bit, and this is from your research earlier, about what you think almost the personality of that organization is as well.
Great, thank you so much. That was a really interesting question and a very, very helpful answer. So thank you. I think that's all we've got time for. It's 11 o'clock. So just want to say a huge thank you to Corrinne for everything you've shared with us. I think, that was an incredible amount of insight and hints and tips and lots for everyone to take away. Sorry we couldn't get through all of your questions. There were lots and lots of them, which I think just goes to show how helpful everyone found the session. So thank you. And if we didn't get around to answering it, then please, take your questions to employers in the Virtual Careers Fair today. ACCA UK obviously has a booth today as well, so please do feel free to go and engage with all of the booths that are here today. Enjoy the Virtual Careers Fair. Thank you for being here, and thank you so much once again to Corrinne for joining us.
Pleasure, and thank you for your great questions.
Thanks everyone. Bye.